If Jake Paul gets a world title shot, that's it. I'm done with boxing. Watch this video. Hello, welcome to On My Headson. I hope you're all well. So after the Mike Tyson and Jake Paul fight, we've always heard from Jake Paul saying, hey, look, I want to be world champion one day. But the absurdity of the absurd, after that fight, you got legitimate world champions coming out and calling out Jake Paul. You got Daniel Dubois getting in his DM saying, if you want to fight a real heavyweight, come and fight me. You got Artur Beterbiev calling him out as well. Now, whether this is just some playful nonsense online, certainly in terms of Beterbiev, he could barely speak English. He's not in charge of his own social media. There's somebody doing that on his behalf. Now, whether they're doing that at his behest, who knows? But essentially, you can tell it's somebody else writing that, and that's not Beterbiev's words. In terms of Dubois, no, he's definitely writing it. And there's other people saying this as well. Now, lots of people are saying, oh, Tony Bellew and Cole Froch. They got this completely wrong. And again, there's people, let's say, ex-boxers, whatever, get it all completely wrong. Cole Froch has definitely not said that he'll fight Jake Paul. He'll said he'll beat him, but he says he doesn't want to fight. He said the only reason he'll get into a ring if it was for charity to do it. Otherwise, now Tony Bellew, maybe he would, but nobody's going to want to fight Tony Bellew. If you are Jake Paul, you'd be an absolute moron if you're going to do that. And you'd be an absolute moron to take anybody on like Daniel Dubois and even Artur Beterbiev, anybody like that. They're also talking about Jake Paul getting on with Ryan Garcia when he finishes up his suspension, of course, his 1 year suspension. And that means Ryan Garcia would have to come all the way up on weight, and then Jake Paul would have to come down on weight. Now, it wouldn't be a world title shot, but it would sell millions and millions of pay-per-views, let alone Jake Paul calling out Canelo Alvarez every 5 minutes as well. The point I want to make here is that Jake Paul, as we know, is not fighting proper boxers, or certainly boxers at his own age, or certainly boxers at a certain level. He's boxing way over the hill boxers or MMA fighters, so he hasn't proven anything. So for him to be able to get into a ring and be offered a world title shot by somebody, for me, it's a bit of a disgrace, actually. They should not be allowed to even entertain this idea. The governing bodies should not even sanction this, should not even let any of this happen. They should not even be allowed to speak about it, because it's just absolute nonsense. Now, if you want to fight a Daniel Dubois, or if you want to fight an Artur Beterbiev in a kind of exhibition fight, or a fight that has got nothing on the line, fine, I've got no problem with that. But here's the condition. If you're going to fight Jake Paul, you have to give up all your bouts. Because in doing that fight, you're actually holding up the division. You should have mandatory contenders wanting to come after your crown. This is Daniel Dubois to Beterbiev, let's say. And then all of a sudden, you're delaying that so you can have this kind of exhibition fight, all this big money fight, whether bouts are on the line or not. So I got no problem in any of these current fighters going after Jake Paul. But the bouts are going to be stripped from you. The bouts are going to be stripped, and then you can go and have your big money fight, if that's what you want to do. If you want to devalue the bouts even more than they already have been, then you can go and do that. Now, as for the likes of Cole Froch and Tony Bellew, well, they are retired guys. They're retired boxers, yeah, mid-40s or whatever, but they're still retired. So for me, these are still nonsense fights. Now, they would be exhibition-y type fights, or they'll even be proper fights. If anything like Cole Froch and Tony Bellew's got anything to do with it, of course, they'd be proper fights. Certainly in their eyes, and they'd obviously have to train for it and get match fit, of course. It's still not legitimate in my eyes for Jake Paul to say that he wants to become a world champion, which is absolute nonsense. I've already said this numerous times in the past. So he wants to bypass everything, get to a point where he's having big money fights, and then get to a point, which is happening now, where current world champions are offering him out. And this is where I have the problem. The problem is that this could happen. This could easily happen now if you're getting legitimate world champions saying, yeah, okay, fine, I'll take you on. If that's going to happen, then they strip them of the bouts. That's I'm black and white on this subject. Jake Paul should not be allowed to have a world title shot ahead of all those other boxers who've legitimately got to that position in their career, because it just smacks them in the face, and it's an insult to those other boxers as far as I'm concerned. It's an insult to the integrity of boxing. It's an insult to all boxing fans out there as well. I feel this passionate about it that I would honestly say right now that if Jake Paul ever got a legitimate world title shot against Canelo, against Daniel Dubois, against Artur Beterbiev, or any other current world champion, I would say that's it. Enough of boxing. I've had enough in it. I'll wash my hands. I'll probably just close down the channel or just focus on football or maybe on tiddlywinks or something like that. I'd have nothing more to do with boxing. That's how strongly I feel about it. This should never be allowed. It should not even be in the conversation. If it's supposed to be in the conversation, Jake Paul has to get rid of all these fights, these big money fights, these big selling fights, and he has to go back to fighting proper boxers. Because even right now, let's just say you said, okay, fine, he's not going to have a world title fight, but we'll put him in with a top 20 fighter. He's not at that level. He's not at a top 20 fighter, nowhere near it. So if he's nowhere near that level, he should not be given this bump into there, this wild card to go in there. It's absolute nonsense. Now, the only reason I can see why the commission bodies, the authorities, the bouts would allow him to go this route, because they know he brings the money. And if there's a big purse bid, guess what? They're going to get 3% or 5% or whatever that is. So they're going to do it out of greed as well. They're going to want their money. And this is where you talk about the corruption in boxing and the absolute nonsense of boxing, because it's just so infuriating when this can happen. And the more it gathers momentum and the more legitimate boxers bite and they go after Jake Paul, the more he's just rubbing his hands together and thinking, ha ha, I've beaten you all. I've got you all eaten out of the palm of my hand. It's an absolute disgrace. That's it. I don't mind Jake Paul at all having these fights if they are just fights. What annoys me is that he's saying he's having these fights because he wants to be world champion. Well, world champion at what? Because you're no boxer. You're not even a good boxer. You're not even a legitimate boxer. You're a boxer who's had 4-year training. Yeah, you dedicated yourself to it, but you're not a good boxer. Any regional boxer will be able to beat the hell out of you. So, look, if we're going to have a proper boxing fight here, I'll tell you one boxer that he should fight. At cruiserweight, he should fight. And I tell you what, this is a guy who will, let's just see where you're at then. Because if you can beat this guy, then I'll tell you what, fine. You're at a decent level, but you're only at regional level, right? You're only at national level then. Vidal Riley. Vidal Riley's got well over 1 million subscribers to his YouTube channel. You know, he's a cruiserweight. He's an English title holder as well. He's trying to get into the British title holder and then on thereafter build as well. So he's been going on that legitimate route. So if you can go up against Vidal Riley, which you're never going to do, you're never going to do it because you're running scared. You're never going to do it. And also you think, well, who's going to know Vidal Riley, right? So it's not about the correct pathway for you. It's not about fighting people your own age and there's maybe a similar skill set or better skill set. It's about the big names. So you're talking absolute bollocks. And anybody who entertains this, and any governing body, any sanctioning body, any of the bouts, any organisations allow this to happen, as I say, wash my hands of the whole thing. Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. If you like what I do here, just keep on watching the videos and I'll catch you again. Bye now.